the difference within 3 months were absolutely astonishing. So I call that Keto Adapted diet, because especially doing 2 very anaerobic sports, I realized very soon that pure ketogenic is not sustainable in the true ketogenic standard, because we're not doing that for health, we're doing that for performance. Whereas ketogenic diet, you can do that for health. So the keto adapted, what I mean is when the body requires anaerobic fuel, then fat isn't really great. The mitochondria just don't have enough time so you can maximize your ability to operate, you can maximize your glycogen store, yet you have a cap.
Hey there, it's Mike Mutzel with HighIntensityHealth.com. Thanks so much for tuning back in. We're at episode number 103, and today we're live with Alessandro Ferretti. He's the founder of Equilibria-Health.com, and he's a nutritionist in the UK. He does a lot of advanced testing when it comes to looking at ketogenic diets and keto-adapted diets and how that affects sports performance, fat loss, recovery, and also heart rate variability and heart rate as well. So I think you're going to really enjoy this, because what he's going to share with you is how when you get more keto adapted, your heart rate actually improves and your heart rate variability improves, so that you can do more work with increased efficiency, which is pretty interesting. So Alex, thanks for being here.
Oh, Mike, thank you for having me. It's always have great chats with you.
Definitely.
Especially if Ben is in the mix as well.
Yeah. That was fun. So just for people that are listening that don't understand, Alex and I met in Austin, Texas recently at the Institute for Functional Medicine meeting, and we actually went out to dinner, and it was really pretty fascinating because he's been experimenting, as I mentioned in the intro, with ketogenic diets, and so he had just all kinds of extra butter and cream, and it was pretty amazing, how much fat he's eating. So Alex, let's kind of talk about your background and what is Equilibria Health, and what do you do on a day-to-day basis with your clients?
Sure. My life has, my working life and my normal life has dramatically changed, especially since starting to look at the effects that our environment has on us. So once upon a time, qualified, reputable college, Institute of Optimum Nutrition, and science-based college. Then I kind of trained out with a couple of naturopaths, and some of the stuff was totally unexplainable, but worked. And I tried to keep an open mind as much as I possibly could. Eventually, science caught up, but different terminology. And I decided I worked for a couple of companies. As an education manager, and one was Solgar at the time. Fantastic kind of experience, fantastic growth. Because just qualified, they headhunted me out of college, and it was brilliant. Then I decided to kind of go solo, and it was probably one of the greatest things I've done. Not because what I've done till then was not good, but because I really kind of wanted to start my own fun. My own research, and so I started to see patients, and the things were reasonably great and stable, blood sugar level, and I need to fit in that pair of trousers, and I can't, and coffee is bad for me, that kind of stuff. Sure. And then I met an amazing colleague of mine called Jack Kreindler, Dr. Jack Kreindler, at the Center for Health and Human Performance in Harley Street, where I practice for now a number of years, and it was really, really interesting to see that it was great. We were introduced, and we were starting to talk as a chat, and within 3 hours I was part of the team in one of those things, and kind of going to an interview, and I've learned a lot because I was working side by side medical profession in private health. So there wasn't a test and then do something. There was a test, measure, do something, remeasure, retest, start again, up until we kind of achieve stuff. And my brain is very mechanic, is very kind of engineering kind of stuff. And it was brilliant for me because I could see effect, cause, and result, effect, cause, and result. And it kept just kind of evolving in that. So now the vast majority of my time is actually in research, researching things that I like, and lecturing. You might see from my post on Facebook that I travel quite a bit. In so researching, Jules Cattell writes all my lectures, which you can see in my Equilibrium Health kind of website. And then I deliberate, we share our experiences, and then we meet it up with the research, and then we look at clinical implications of things that we have tested in trial, and then we kind of deliver it to practitioners or medical professions. So they keep you on my toes, obviously, because everything has to be properly referenced. And so I think the biggest change for me was losing attachment to things we were taught. 7 out of 10 pillars that we were ingrained, pun intended, by the way, in our brain have now proven not to say they were proven to be wrong, but definitely they've proven to be not fitting everyone. So once I lost that kind of attachment and said, okay, let's see what happens, and kind of questioning myself more and more, I started to find trends and data that was like, wow. So this is what I'm doing at present.
Fantastic. Thanks for going into detail. I think people enjoy that. And one of the things you've been focusing on at present is the effects that ketogenic diets have on heart rate variability in the sympathetic nervous system and sports performance. And I think that's really fascinating. We talk about, Alex, as you may know, heart rate variability a lot in the context of heart math and increasing vagal nerve activity to reduce the inflammatory response, improve digestion, and much more. But this is a totally fascinating new area. And I think we'll dive into the rabbit hole a little bit here, but maybe let's talk about your experience with ketogenic diets and kind of how you got into it, and what are some of the surprising findings that you found up to now.
Sure, Mike. Sure. I started a ketogenic diet probably post Jimmy Moore. I never kind of got to read that book when it came out and when it was in trend. But someone gave me I listened to, you actually saw my phone. Before I met you, you were on my iPhone and with your high-intensity health. And I met you, didn't know who you were. And I said, oh, Mike Soul. And I said, I remember that name from somewhere. Yeah, you're on my podcast. just beside Dave Asprey. So I came across, obviously, the Bulletproof system. And I thought, okay, what are, did I like it or not? What are the good points? The good points is we are burning fat. And I never really got to understand why, when I was going back to my dad in Italy, and eat plenty of fat, we have certain things that are basically compressed fat that, is a kind of delicatessen that with rosemaries and garlics and all these kind of cardioprotecting herbs and hepatosupportive herbs naturally found in the diet. And instead of putting on weight, I was losing weight. And I was going mental because I was getting more trimmed. I wasn't really training that much, and still training a bit, sprints up a hill and bicycle, that kind of stuff. But definitely my body composition really liked that diet. And it wasn't that Mediterranean either. So I thought, okay, let's try. Let's see what happens. And I started to put kind of 10 people on this regime, other 9 people probably as mentally corrupted about nutrition as I am. And I just started to test and I said, let's see what's going to come up, and let's find out. So this is how I came across the style I use now, because technically it doesn't seem to belong to any box, if that makes sense. So it's not strictly ketogenic, it's not strictly paleo. I know that there are some differences in there, someone there is in and the other one is out, but I just posted something enlightening what are the main differences between the two. And especially starting from a very clean diet beforehand, the difference within 3 months were absolutely astonishing. So I call that Keto-adapted diet, just in case, because especially doing 2 very anaerobic sports, I realized very soon that pure ketogenic is not sustainable in the true ketogenic standard, because we're not doing that for health, we're doing that for performance. Whereas ketogenic diet, you can do that for health and not performance. So if you're looking for performance as your first priority, then we need to do changes. And I didn't want to give up my sport. So this is when I started to experiment with different things, like not only the carbs at night, as was prompted years ago by, Dave Asprey and etc. I also started to prompt dividing, so finding out the exact level of carbs that you're burning during the anaerobic training and monitoring when you were eventually falling off ketosis. And it's really, really interesting what happened. So I'd be very happy to go into that if you want. So that's the little story in relation to ketogenic diet. And this is done over a period of probably 7 months, at least 6 months. And I just had a confirmation today that this is going into a PhD study with Cambridge Uni under the supervision of Dr. Justin Roberts. And I'm absolutely thrilled by it. Absolutely thrilled. We need to find the funds and a buffer to pay, out of our own pocket. I hope it doesn't come to that, but if it does come to that, is good, because it's totally unbiased. I'm not attached to any diet. This is the direction, and this is what we're doing at present, especially in relation to heart rate variability, because one of the things that we did not expect was a slight increase, meaning good, of heart rate variability without changing the modulation of increase of the training. So I try to maintain, when I want to measure something or accidentally I come across a different value or a trend, I try to maintain then all the other variables as fixed as I possibly can.
Sure.
And heart rate variability, let's score it out of 10, improve over nearly whole point, which is a lot. That's 10%. You think, 10% is not that much. When you are already at a certain level and you've been like at that level for a really long time, then 1 whole point, meaning 10%, it's a hell of a lot. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So So this is how I came across these kind of trends and data and results.
I had a bodybuilder friend back in 2001, and when he would cut down during the springtime to shed, a lot of fat for the competitions, he would eat half a jar of peanut butter every day. And so I was really confused by that. And I started experimenting with that, with almond butter back in 2002 with myself, and it really worked. And I never really knew, about ketosis and that, fats can kick up, beta hydroxybutyrate and all that sort of stuff. But it makes sense when you dive into the research. And for some reason, I too, like you, Alex, kind of resisted this ketogenic diet because I was, not really sure what the effects were. And you hear in the sports community that's, you lose your glycogen stores and performance goes down and all this sort of stuff. But now I'm much more open to it after meeting with you. So that's pretty fascinating stuff. So before we talk about heart rate variability, you mentioned something I'd love for you to talk about, and that's Keto Adapted. And I think that's important. So for our listeners that, they want to lose weight, but they also want to improve their sports performance. Can you define what Keto Adapted is, and then kind of how that's different from ketosis?
Yeah, I think, Mike, this is a great question because we don't really. Okay, everyone is different. We are in a place where some people with a certain amount of carbs that will fall off ketogenesis, some other people with exactly the same amount of carb proportions. So I call it substrate proportion, protein, carbohydrates, and fat. So if their pie chart in MyFitnessPal, to give an example, is exactly the same, some of them stay in ketosis, some others fall out ketosis. And then I started to link genetics. Now, that has been fun. Amazing kind of discovering trends because, NR3 1C1 gene and G6P genes, these are people that have slightly higher circulating glucose level and they are more glucocorticoid resistant. And so, these people, not only one that will benefit so much of a keto adapted diet, but perhaps they can work in hybridic condition using the two substrate much more flexible than perhaps other individuals. And that is proving to be right. So the keto adapted, what I mean is when the body requires anaerobic fuel, then fat isn't really great. The mitochondria just don't have enough time so you can maximize your ability to operate, you can maximize your glycogen store, yet you have a cap. It's like you are paid per hour. You can work more hours in a day, you can be paid more, but there is a limit on how much you can be paid per hour and how many hours you got in a day. So there is a cap. So that's your glycogen. Whereas if you work per job where you have all the time that you want, and then you can kind of not be there, then this will be your ketones. And I'm saying ketones because I measured two, both. The one, let's say, more exhausted through the breath, as long as you're not on carbs, obviously, otherwise it picks up the carbs as well. And the beta-hydroxybutyrates. And these obviously are done by blood. And I find both of them to guide me in my ketosis. And this is really important, which I haven't seen. I have seen lots of comparison, but no one is used together to understand what actually is happening in the body. I was a little bit surprised by it. So mainly is a ketogenic diet, but when someone is doing an anaerobic sport that goes over the usual 10, 15, 50 minutes, kind of twice a week, for which someone would do that for health purposes, then we need a different source of fuel. So in these cases, I tend to calculate very simply. I haven't seen any papers on this, but I thought, okay, let's try. And with me and my guinea pigs, hopefully they won't be listening because we could hear swear words. And I thought, right, okay, how much time in your hour, so let's assume I go training for 2 hours. In these 2 hours, how much time do I spend in aerobic and how much time do I spend in anaerobic? Then I found out the calories, and I divided the calories by 4 to find how many grams of carbs I need, and I divided by 9 to find how many grams of fat I need. Guess what? It worked.
Wow.
It took some changes because so what I decided to do is, well, how about we feed back into the body the level of carbohydrate that he's using when in anaerobic, but then provides a kind of always there support from the fats. And I don't know why, and I don't know fully how, but it's working. And it's working really well because what has happened is that my mass has increased probably about a centimeter in, across the chest and arms and legs, especially legs. Legs was the biggest improvement because I do a leg, legs are involved in my sports. And being anaerobic, given a high, isocaloric diet, so not hyper or hypo, isocaloric diet, I thought I was going to lose weight. I thought I was going to deplete my glycogen stores. And then what I tend to do for 1 day a week or 1 day every 4 days, this is where you start to really differ from everyone. I do a kind of hypoproteic, so slightly low protein, same amount of fat, and really carbing up after training at not a very high level, but on a low, so basically on an empty. So this is where, generally speaking, is a ketogenic diet. I definitely I definitely advise people to have carbohydrates in the evening. We know the serotonin, especially around 6, 7, to allow a couple of hours to make sure that serotonin is produced to get better level of melatonin, especially in individuals that don't get enough light or they work in an office. Otherwise, their quality the sleep quality is shocking. And then modifying the carbs during the training, but starting already with the glycogen ready to go in the stores not because you have insulin resistance in your blood, kind of thing. And these are the two, let's say, major changes from the original ketogenic. It's not bulletproof, it's not ketogenic, it's not fully paleo. And so I've been kicked out by every single group on Facebook because I don't belong to any of them.
You're ostracized. That is funny. I'm going to pause right there. And if you would, Alex, and kind of expand, I know people are going to have a lot of questions on this. So if I heard you correctly, basically in this keto adapted state for athletes when they're doing a lot of burst type training, and that can be deadlifts, squats, power cleans, military presses, something like that, that short duration, high intensity anaerobic work, we want to utilize carbohydrate or glycogen for that. But in the other windows, outside of exercise, we want to stay in ketosis. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, spot on. And also, Mike, if I may kind of refine what I just mentioned and finesse it a bit, is that if I go, okay, bike ride, okay, so you can go, there's Tour de France is on now, so you can go up the Passo dello Stelvio in Italy, which is like vertical. I'd struggle to walk it, or you can go on a flat, just under your anaerobic threshold. So if you're if I go for a bike ride, and I know that I'm dipping in and out 5 to 10 minutes, I only have with me MCT oils. That's all I have. On the other hand, if I go for a bike ride around the hills, this is when I want glucose. So in the same training session, if we work out roughly what is the split between the calorie expenditure during anaerobic and calorie expenditure during aerobic, it seems to work very, very well. And what was really interesting, which I haven't fully kind of embraced yet, is that if someone has carbs to refuel after these events, if he hasn't done it properly, after the refueling, within 20 to 40 minutes, it will fall. A hypoglycemic event will follow. So the body will overly secrete insulin because not used to it, or because resistant, that's another point, kind of glucose disappears into the glycogen stores, and the body wants more and more and more and more and more, and then we don't have enough. By using the fat as a base to look after the basic metabolic functions, if the body has already been adapted to work on fats, then we don't have that anymore, and I haven't had one since, and I was quite prone to those. So this was one of the things that really kind of, it changed my game and the game of some of the people, because some of them, for me, except the bike rides, all the rest is purely anaerobic. But then I realized that if I do certain things, I'm not in anaerobic, and I don't want to feed glucose. And so I'm using a mix. I have 2 bottles, one with emulsified MCT oils, and the other one with pure straightforward 2-to-1 glucose to fructose, as we do, and they all got the usual stuff, and B vitamins and mitochondrial support and branched chain amino acids, and to prevent catabolism if it's heavily anaerobically. One thing I'd like to specify is if someone does the 20 minutes training, high intensity, even if they really push themselves, I would probably only use flavored branched chain amino acids alongside other stuff. If they get into troubles after 15 to 20 minutes working anaerobically and they're still without carbs coming in, I think maybe the maximization of glycogen stores may not be adequate. So I'm talking anaerobic for over 30, 40 minutes. So you dip out the anaerobic and then you dip back in, but the total amount is quite substantial, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I think for people that this all depends on, how adapted you are to your training. So if someone's new to training, their ability to store and synthesize glycogen in the muscles is going to be a lot less than someone that's very trained. So that's where this gets really personalized and kind of complex, and people are going to be like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. But if we can kind of summarize what you're saying. So if you're just doing kind of a short, maybe it's a booty bar workout or a spin class, and you're just trying to exercise for fitness, you can probably get away with just the branched chain amino acids, and that would probably help. But if it gets any longer than 20 minutes, that's when you need to throw in some of the sugar. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, that's correct. And I found that out the hard way, because everything was working fine, and doing my my small contest, and the guy wasn't. It was okay. I think, right, okay, he's fit, but maybe my experience can kind of make up for it. And then in training, I got Big Steve. And Big Steve is Big Steve.
Yeah.
Golden tooth, black African, and massive solid. And I thought, right, okay, and I ran out. I completely ran out. And it was my third contest. In judo was 5 minutes, and I couldn't hold a glass of water. I completely exhausted myself. And it was really interesting to actually see that, okay, this is my low. Now I found that this is my low, because then tendency to depression started to set in, and then I tried out only with fats. It's the glycogen loaded up, but only with fat during the actual exercise. And that's still better results, but still didn't quite work, and no, did work for my guinea pigs. And then I tried to use the carbs and the sugars, and automatically I had a massive improvement. But within the following session, I didn't need to adapt, because the body takes time to adapt one way, but it takes very little to adapt the other way. Obviously, because we use that for emergency. So you don't want a long process to try to run away from a tiger. You want the sugar entering, going in, and off you run, and you run as fast as you possibly ever can. So, but then at times I started to measure the blood levels, and they were higher than expected within 3 or 4 hours after replenishing with carbs. And I thought, this ain't going to work, surely. And I couldn't kind of figure it out. So I started to tweak with the levels, and yes, it is exactly as you mentioned. As long as we use carbohydrate that are relevant for the amount of time that anaerobically we spend in our training, not going too high and still providing the fats as a base, we can go back into ketosis quite quickly. Quite quickly can be 6 hours or can be 20, but we can go back very, very quickly.
Wow.
And it seems to me, this is only my assumption, I want to make this very clear, that the more you do that process, the quicker the body, it can switch back. Oh yes, it's the carb day. Oh yes, it's the training carbs. Oh yes, I'm back on fats. I love it. That's the kind of concept.
Wow. That is fantastic. So now you mentioned a 50-50 ratio, I think, of glucose and fructose. And so if people are like, you know what, I want to stick to whole foods, could maybe you do half a banana and then some of the MCT oil for someone that's doing powerlifting or CrossFit or strength training? Have you experimented with the differences there between real food and kind of this refined approach?
Yeah. If there is a recipe out there, I failed to find it.
Right. Gotcha.
So I use a berry concentrate with a specific measured levels of fructose. So it's actually true sugar fruit. And I then tend to use either maltodextrin and or other sources. I have done the banana with avocado and MCT oils that are emulsified. I did some little jellies to quickly use. I've done all sorts of experiments. My lady nearly divorced me because I was asking her, so how about, where's the gelling setting point and temperature? So she's looking at me, so what's that? So no, I cook daily stuff.
Oh man!
So it was really great to actually see, and bear in mind that I down anything. If I know these are the grandma's or my lady's food, they taste amazing, or is fuel. And if it's fuel, I don't mind at all what it takes. However, working with patients, I wanted to give some, you don't want to throw up because it's so disgusting. So I would say if you really want to do it, you may want to use some table sugar, which is glucose, or some brown rice syrup. Just careful with toxins in that stuff, because I'm struggling to find something that they can guarantee that hasn't been, moldy somewhere for years, or, you know the story, man.
Sure.
So you can use also a mix. There is a lovely recipe with dates, maca powder, brown rice syrups, where it goes close to 1-to-1, glucose to fructose. That's the best I've found. And then you add your MCT oils, or you add your fats that you can. So you can be natural, but if you are doing at elite level, you may find that if you want that edge, then you may not have enough. Also because the mass of the food is much bigger if you stay natural.
Definitely.
So you don't want too many fibers when your stomach is just barely accepting glucose. And that was one of in very anaerobic sport, I couldn't face it. My stomach, I knew that as fast as it was going down, it probably would have come out. So, sorry I do apologize. So if you want to stay natural, the mass of the food that you need to have to make up for 650, 700, 800, 900 calories per hour consumption is considerable. And then you take out from your, those were the findings.
Yeah, that's so for competitions, for real, high-end performance and people doing long duration, the fibers can be a problem. I used to do competitive bike racing, and I love, I was the only guy out there with like dates and bananas, and then I would have little protein powder actually, and I didn't do any fat at that time, but I would do these fat bombs beforehand, these coconut oil deals. But fiber can get to you over time, like you're saying. So if you're just going to the gym to do a 45-minute strength, some leg days and squats and deadlifts and cleans, which we recommend, probably not a problem to have a little bit of fruit. But if you're performing like you're saying with jiu-jitsu and judo and so forth, taekwondo, that's going to be, I can imagine that'd be tough.
Yeah, especially if you're going to get hit in that area as well. Yeah.
So you eat your banana and get kicked in the stomach, and there you go.
It comes out with the skin.
Yeah.
So.
That's awesome. So let's kind of transition here to heart rate variability and explore that a little bit, and maybe why that's important. Why, even though we talk about it a lot, we might have some new listeners tuning into this one. So why is heart rate variability increased? Why is it important for athletes and everyday people for health?
Okay, so I always take a second, because where do I start? I came across heart rate variability because my brain was stronger than my physical part of the body. And if in doubt, train. If in doubt, push it. If in doubt, and then you get injured.
Right.
So throughout the frustration of getting injured and then still thinking that I could train, then I started to try to find ways to measure inflammatory response and starting to find trends and data. And through heart rate variability, the level of injury, niggling pain, exhaustion, overreaching, as in I'm now in OTS, overtraining syndrome, OTS for the listener, has basically, I haven't entered one since. In a couple of years, it must have happened twice where I cooked myself a little bit too much, and one of them because I was doing a lot of anaerobic training and just using fats in true full ketogenic diet, and that didn't work, and I would reach overtraining. So that means, to me, HRV is two things. One is a way to understanding your sympathetic activation, and the other one is a way to understanding your inflammatory response. It doesn't make an amazingly clear distinction between the both, but then through methylation and histamine and other symptoms, you may guess very well. And by making, you start to know your body after a while, and you think, I'm inflamed, and then you stand up and you think, you see birds, and you think, right, okay, maybe my blood pressure is dropping too much, and maybe that has a consequence on noradrenaline storage being very low, and maybe adrenals not manufacturing enough of this noradrenaline, and so you can come to all sorts of conclusions that all you need to do is notice it, measure them, and quantify them. And once you quantify the trend, then you can have a better understanding. So to answer quickly to your question, I would say that heart availability gives you a really good indication of where the body is at in relation to training, in relation to something that is, it allows you to understand better your training, or understand better the inflammatory response, finding out things that you were not really aware of, especially if you cross-reference that with all the data all the data point I'm tracking, because I'm tracking glucose, ketones, two ways, life load, so stress response, good or bad, it doesn't matter. If I'm really, really happy, it's still lots of noradrenaline and dopamine going haywire and having lots of fun, but we feel tired the following day. So we need to take into account how many metabolic reactions the body does to be happy, to be sad, to be angry, to do something. So now automatically recovery takes a completely different kind of turn, because I thought I was recovering socializing.
Sure.
Well, not always. And if you are socializing with a lovely mojito on the beach and you say half a word every half an hour, that's maybe recovering if you are protected from the sunshine. If you're under the sunshine, your immune system is taking a heck of a whack, and your HIV drops way, way, way down, right? Doing nothing, which I never kind of thought that. So you can see that you can use that as a tool. And I was I was measuring the training intensity, not only perceived, but data on heart rate. And so out of finding all this data, this is when things started to make eventually sense, not the start.
I love it. That's fantastic. And what you've noticed is that as you've become more keto adapted, your heart rate variability has improved. And when we were having dinner that night, I was like so kind of perplexed by that and wanted to read a little bit more. And as I found out, so there's this GPR41, G protein coupled to receptor 41, and it actually innervates in the sympathetic nervous system. And what I found is that beta hydroxybutyrate, one of the main ketone bodies that as you get keto adapted, latches onto that, and that suppresses the inflammatory response and also the sympathetic nervous system. So I thought that was really fascinating. But share with us like what you've seen in terms of how long after you get into ketosis, and then is that a direct proportional increase in heart rate variability, and so what are some of the
I can tell you the time they took the shortest and the time they took the longest. So I have an average that it only differs of, in a way, 8 weeks. And one was more towards the 4th week when we started to see different changes. But if changes are so short, you think maybe down to inflammation. But when we started to work out correlation and averages, then you start to think that R is not 0. R starts to go up. And you think, right, okay, well, we're not at 1, but so basically you're starting to see that week per week, the average keeps slightly increasing all the time. And then when you're just about to overreach, and you overreach a bit, you know that you're overreaching, you are conscious that you're overreaching, because then you know you're going to stop and recover properly. So you push your boundary, you let your body know what's coming next in your training or the intensity, then you cut back. Because there, once again, I'm saying this is how I use it. There are all sorts of different trainers that said, no, you should never reach overreaching. No, you don't want to reach OTS, but sometimes overreaching is, I think, very beneficial to kind of shock the body. Right, I need to get my butt into gear. in order to make some changes and, push a little bit further, as long as there is no injury. So, and we started to notice that the average was increasing the RMSSD, which is probably one of the most researched values. It's still very precise, but it's probably the one that's got more body of data behind it. It kept increasing, and it kept increasing kind of constantly over the average of 6 months. So between 4 and 12 weeks, people see that increase in average. And yeah, with the GB4, that is definitely one of the theories that I would definitely put my money on. Yeah. And also the glucocorticoid activation. It seems to me that the people that have an increased response, that are predisposed to have an increased response for glucocorticoid activation and normally higher circulating levels of glucose, these people would benefit more out of ketogenic diets, and also indirectly reducing the inflammatory response as well. And that brings also around probably a better HRV. My gut feeling, and I have no proof of that, so you can argue this totally, and I'll be totally submissive on that. I don't think that the training has an effect on that. Mm-hmm. So it's not the training, or maybe in single-digit figure as far as percentage, because I hardly change the training, or I hardly change how my training is structured. So it's low, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, simplified, but and I haven't changed that, I haven't touched that. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit more than a gut feeling. I got some data, but it's very loose data. So
yeah, that's fascinating. Thanks for the details. So you mentioned, and this is in your wonderful PowerPoint presentation where you tracked all these different variables, and heart rate was one. Have we seen I think you said this offline, a reduction in your resting heart rate, and then your ability to actually, when you're overreaching or really performing in that high, anaerobic zone, your heart rate can actually go higher than it used to be. You want to talk about heart rate?
Yeah. I love talking about heart rate because I'm 45, and being an old guy, I'm still reaching 189, and maybe I'm a bit gray. Perhaps not the best time to ask me what I do for a living, but I still can hang out with, guys 10, 20 years younger in training, that is. And what's interesting is that my heart rate, resting heart rate, doing less aerobic, that's the bit that drove me potty, drove me absolutely bananas. So the resting heart rate doing slightly less aerobic activity has gone lower. And I'd never really reached for decades sub 50. And at the same time, the maximum heart rate has increased. And this is not just with the usual, polar H7 that tends to at times, could I do that?
No, that's fine. Yeah, I was going to ask you about tools. So yeah, share with us the tool.
Yeah. Okay, I have no connection with Polar or Firstbit or it's fine. I love researching. I don't sell anything. I don't sell on my website. You can go in and there is no buy one get one free. None. I don't sell anything. So that's the reason why I'm quite relaxed in giving stuff. So I find this that at times, especially doing in contact sport, it will not measure well. Yeah, it's the toughest I've ever found. I broke 2 Zephyrs, and so I had to rely on a good one. And I tend to use one that also does heart rate variability called Firstbeat, something like that. Then it is like a proper one kind of thing. It goes, and then I had to strap it with kinesio tape, and that I still noticed that 185, 189, 187. So anytime that I needed my kind of fast twitches type 2, so the anaerobic A and B, in the A, this is pure strength. So time is not a problem. So you lift it, you need to lift it, and it doesn't matter if you lift it now or in a week, slowly, that's pure strength. Whereas for power, is the type B, then this is when my heart rate definitely has exceeded something that I haven't reached in years. I mean, decades. So yeah, it has been stretched. So we can see that also as because aerobic people are down, anaerobic people are up with resting heart rate in the high 60s or low 70s, some of them, like bodybuilders, for example. And then you have a middle, the CrossFit people, which is brilliant, by the way, brilliant, love it. But in this way, he seems to have done that. And I'm really happy with that. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Me and guinea pigs as well, yeah.
I love it.
Always
just to clarify for people that haven't done any, heart rate testing, what the significance of what Alex is saying is, so if you do an aerobic activity, you can do the same amount of work, but the energy is more being efficiently utilized. So for example, if you would normally maybe do some, a distance on a bike or climb a hill and your heart rate was at 165, you can now do that same power output. So climb the hill at the same speed on the same force on the pedals, but your heart rate will be lower. So your machine is more efficient, less stress on the body. I think that's really important for people to understand.
That was the clear way of saying what I said.
No, you did a good job of it. I was trying to articulate it in a way that maybe I didn't do the best job. But because again, I used to do the bike racing, and so I did. Used to do the polar heart rate monitor, which I didn't really like. I thought it was bouncing all over the board. And then I got into the power tap. And so that was a much better way, I thought, to really assess a direct power output. But I wasn't doing it. I could just go by how I felt. So if I woke up really tired, fatigued, or like you said, you stand up quickly and you see birds and butterflies and stuff, I knew that I was overtraining. So I'd scale back, eat more and stuff like that. But now we're at a whole new level with that. So the device that you held up that measures both heart rate and heart rate variability, what was that called again?
This is, I did a lecture in London for sport nutrition live conference, which is part of the, let's say, the functional medicine, but in sport. And a guy called Tim Wright has given me one to test, and then I thought, I tell you what, I'll buy it, because I buy a gadget. I'm the kind of guy that, don't ask me, if you meet me, don't ask me what do you do for a living, because I got gadgets everywhere and I love data. I'm very boring. So there's something called Bodyguard, which I love, that, just looking in my email just in case. Okay, so it's called First Beat. And what I really love about this one is that it gives you graphs, not only in performance, but it gives you graph for what as far as your sympathetic dominance and as far as your parasympathetic dominance, and it gave sorry.
No, you're good.
My son is outside the window, which I'm facing the fields and the woods, jumping up and down, pretending to kind of do the shark thing. And okay, I'm sorry. Sorry.
I love it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a chat later. So it gives you basically amazing reports on how your body is recovering, measuring low frequency, high frequencies, epoch training, trend training data, and really noticing when you think you're recovering during the day, at times you're not. And I discovered that in my sleep, I only recover for less than a third of my sleep, just measuring the heart rate and heart rate variability and all the data, which is very comprehensive. So once again, I don't sell it. I don't get commissions. It's fine. But if you find something similar, this is a more advanced version. That one, 45 pounds, which is your $70. Couple of apps for something 99, and you're kitted up.
Yeah.
And I love that because I want to make these things accessible to people. Not everyone has £300-400, which is $600-700 to spend for the training because they are elite people.
Right.
I want to make sure that things should be available for everyone, even though, the practice is in Harley but that doesn't mean that, people should. So if you want a lifestyle assessment and a very detailed assessment, then probably this is something more your interest, or find a practitioner that can do you just the test and retest, really simple. Or if you want to have a bit of a better idea, you use like a Polar A7 with an iOS and Android kind of kit, and you get a lot of data. You can go a really long way with that. If you haven't done anything like that before.
Yeah.
These are the two things I use the most.
Right. Fantastic. We'll put all the links for all those different products in the show notes here at highintensityhealth.com. So thanks for sharing that, Alex. And, I think just to kind of summarize and kind of close here, and we have a couple of final questions, but I think the biometrics and the devices are really nice. Even if you're, not performing at a high level or competing, it's still good to have. It gives you that feedback on where your body's at. And then you can correlate, as you said, life stressors with your performance in the gym or at, CrossFit or whatever. And I think that's a nice correlation, so you can make better decisions. Like, oh my gosh, my heart rate was really high after I went out drinking and partying. Like, what's going on with that? Or it's really low.
How do you know that?
Yeah, I love it. So, Alex, a couple final questions here. So we want to know, you're a very high performer. You're doing a lot of data analyzing and science and stuff like that. We want to know what your morning routine is. So if you could share in a few minutes what your ideal morning is.
I love my mornings. Well, I love most of the time of the day, except when my son jumps up and down behind my computer, pulling faces at me. I love when I set up my day, because it's something that I used to work in London all the time, and I've noticed that 20 minutes on the tube for me, which is like a tube, metropolitan, whatever, leave a footprint on me, negative one, for at least 2 hours. Some people say is the mold underneath, some people say the people, some people say because it's sad, because it's dirty. Okay, whatever. If I'm stuck in traffic in my car for the same amount of time, I relax. My HRV goes up. So I'm listening to your podcast, I'm listening to all the stuff I love, I'm speaking to friends. So we can gather an awful lot of very meaningful data from our environment. And in the morning, to me, is one of where my HRV is at the highest. Out of every time, even in sleep, I don't reach that, because I go into such a parasympathetic, sympathetic balance, and that is brilliant. And some people achieve that through, yoga. So for me, it's a kind of meditative state. Without calling meditation, I organize my day in my head. I set the things that I wish to achieve and kind of prioritize. I wish my son have a great day before he goes. And then it's nice for me that I just work beside, I live beside woods and, Cotswolds countryside in the UK, and it's just so relaxing. And I practice my forms very slowly in a kind of Tai Chi form. I know for the Tai Chi master that will swear at me right now, but I even mix countries, so I do apologize, but you know what I'm trying to say. Yeah, just really simple movements, no power, just kind of clarity. So it's clarifying my head what the heck I wish to do on that specific day.
I love it.
That's the first thing. And obviously there is my fat with my stimulant. Some people use green tea, some other use coffee, some other use whatever. Sometimes I have a mix of those things, and with avocado and whatever. I'm just really looking forward to that.
Yeah. That's great. Thanks for going into that detail, Alex. Now, if there was one herb, nutrient, botanical, or supplement that you just couldn't live without, and you frequently recommend to your athletes and people that you work with, what would that be and why?
this question asked now, I definitely would say real food that contains methyl groups. I know this is sounding so discounted and so boring but when that is out, so many other things start to go wrong. And the data have accumulated, so, call it broccoli, call it, methyl B12 with MTHF or folic acid or balanced ratio or whatever, it doesn't matter. But that's definitely one of the things that everyone has to look at it, because they eat every day, 3, 4, 5, 1 time a day, but they do every day. And that combined with glutathione and the usual, the usual funky ones, that balance, I think, is really, really good for people to maintain a good degree of health, especially if they are wanting to perform at a certain level, which I know I don't do that for longevity. I don't do that, I do that for pleasure and fun at that moment in time. And then you have the usual things like, creatine, branched chain amino acids, and some people do the H&Bs and, all the other stuff. But the one I go back to, if your methylation inflammatory response is out, I can measure that pretty much daily. I can't trace what it is, but most of the times goes back to that.
Yeah, fantastic.
And it's so simple. We just need to eat good food and have the right supplement to start with. It's something that anyone has access to.
Right. And those supplements that you mentioned, a balance, activated folate and B12, methylcobalamin, adenosylcobalamin, they're pretty inexpensive and readily accessible. So.
Yeah. Especially some of the ones. To me, for some of them, it's cheaper to get them from the States and one of the one I use is the Xymogen, the one that I add to the methylcobalamin, one when I have the extra MTHF, and the other one is the Seeking Health one. Can I mention those things?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's no problem.
Okay, cool. We are in England.
Right.
So I'll be in jail by now. And the other one is the lozenge, the active B12 with MTHF. Not for everyone to start straight away. They can't just go from folic acid and then start to popping this lozenge, thinking they're like jelly babies, because they're gonna feel pretty awful, as it has happened so many times. But especially in athletic performance. And I did that with placebos. One was just a calcium thing and to make no effects while you're exercising. Like this tiny is like, 50 milligrams less than that. And I used those in different individuals without saying anything. Good man. It's pretty powerful, because if you don't sort out your methylation while you're exercising, you're producing more all sorts of kind of histamine and inflammatory reaction. These are not going to help your performance for sure. Mm. And also the sweating was less profuse, and so yeah, the MTHF B12 is something I look after, and also a proper good electrolyte supplement within your bottle with your branched chain amino acid if you do anaerobic. If you don't do anaerobic and just pure aerobic all the time, or you're not training at high intensity, you can save the money perhaps, I don't know. But that's something that I probably would do.
Fantastic. Great info. Thanks for diving into the detail. I think that'll give people some nice direction to go on. So the final question here, Alex, if you could share one lifestyle or health tip, maybe with the President of the United States or the World Health Organization, what do you think is the most powerful lifestyle and or health tip that people could do to improve their health?
Yeah, I think about these things every day, and only for 20 seconds. But this all it takes to bring our awareness. What the heck are we doing to our food? And I don't want any rhetorical answers. I don't want any. I just love to know, is this game of feeding certain, how can I say this politely?
I don't think I can.
Is this game worth the candle where we are altering our food to then provide other service when people get sick? Is it really worth it? Is there enough food on the planet if everyone would eat healthily? That's another problem. If everyone is healthy and the food is affordable for everyone, would we have enough grass-fed things, vegan things that are non-GMO, non-this, not that? And the answer is, I don't know. It's a big doubt. So I wanted to, if I ever get to ask that question, is love life. You gotta love life. If not, do something, changing, seek help, do something about it. Because I came from an interesting childhood, and a couple of times the other side was very, very, very attractive, and a lot more attractive than this side. And through the love of life and love of my family and love spirituality, not religion, but spirituality, then lots of things make so much more sense. And the other one is, what are we doing to our food? These are the two things that I will get the most boring questions ever to be asked to ask to the president.
Yeah, it's important though. It's a very important question. Food comes up a lot, so that's fantastic. Yeah. Awesome. Food is, from tradition, is something that keeps us alive, and something that grandma used to show us love with. And when you don't have the ability to show love through food, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% of that love is lost. We raise dopamine by eating things that we like. We can quantify that. And I see this every day with my lady and our son. And it's an amazing way to bring something to the table. It brings community, it brings longevity. We know that through the blue zones and the guys in there, or whoever you would look at, it will increase that. And in this constant novelty-seeking kind of society where everyone is cocooned by everything, someone gets sued because he just bangs the elbow. So, well, my era, you need to get properly hit, and you still need to get out of that by yourself before you call anyone. Yeah. And I think it's self-responsibility about you taking your own choices and helping yourself to take that choice. Right.
Yeah. I think that sounds about right.
I love it. Alessandro Ferretti, thank you so much for coming on the show. Your website again is equilibria-health.com. Is that right?
Yeah, that's the one. But yeah, is like a business card to see what we do and where we're at.
Well, thank you so much again for coming on the show.
Yeah, it's been amazing, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. Anytime you want, good man.
My pleasure. Thanks, Alex.